Antigo Embaixador dos EUA na China, a China é a raiz do problema das tarifas. Antigo Embaixador dos EUA na China explora as complexidades das negociações comerciais EUA-China e simpatiza com a administração Trump.
I want to start with the meetings that took place over the weekend in Geneva, and I'm curious sort of how you look at the way they unfolded and the outcome of them. Do you see it as a positive step, the agreement that was come to?
Well, first of all, I start from a first principle, and that is that China's been the largest and most important disruptor in the global trade system for about 3 decades right now. There's a reason why the United States and many other countries around the world have placed tariffs on China. China's manufactured exports in particular is because China's been dumping them around the world below the cost of production, and it's been a killer for jobs, both in the United States historically in the last several decades, but also around the world. You have a situation now where Turkey and India and Brazil and Colombia and Mexico and Canada and the United States and the European Union have all put tariffs on China. So I have a degree of sympathy for the situation that President Trump and his team inherited, which was a situation that we left when I left in mid-January as ambassador to China. President Biden, a year ago, in May 2024, placed 100% tariffs on Chinese EVs, 50% on semiconductors, 25% on lithium batteries. So the root of this problem is China and Chinese trade policy. The Chinese are trying to act now, you saw it in the statements over the weekend from Vice Premier He Lifeng, as if they're the innocent party, that they are the victim of this trade war by President Trump, when in fact, and that they're the responsible party, when in fact the reality is quite different. I think it's important to set the stage. Having said that, these are going to be very, very difficult negotiations over the next 90 days. I think in the end, self-interest and logic will prevail. Both sides need an agreement. It was encouraging to hear Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent say that they had agreed in principle they don't want to decouple these two economies. Last year we had a $642 billion two-way trade relationship in goods and services with China. China is our third largest trade partner. About 1 million American jobs depend on trade with China. Upwards of 20 million manufacturing jobs in China depend on trade with the United States. So neither country can afford to sunder the economic ties and the millions of interactions that our private sector has had with the Chinese economy over the last 40 years. And I think in the end, there will be a trade agreement. But getting there, I think, is going to be extraordinarily difficult.
During your tenure, you were trying to, if I may, rehabilitate a relationship that had worsened during the first Trump administration. Develop conduits for communication, reestablish economic and security ties. When you left that post, could you have envisioned this turning out the way that it has, in terms of how the rhetoric has been ratcheted up, the tariffs have been put in place? Is it the worst case that you envisioned, or worse yet still?
I certainly did not anticipate 145% American tariffs on China or 125% Chinese tariffs on American goods. And the trade war that has resulted effectively led to a trade embargo as of the past week, when no ships were sailing with goods back and forth, when manufacturers couldn't export to each other's countries, and you see the significant shortage of goods that traditionally are important to both economies. I didn't expect that to happen at all. And that's the most important thing happening in the global economy right now, which is another reason I think that eventually both sides have to agree to a deal to calm global markets. We're the two largest global economies, so we have a profound impact on the health of the global economy, but we also need the global economy to be functioning in a rational and stable way. There's so much at stake. I didn't see that happening. I think few people saw that happening. You remember candidate Trump pledged 60% tariffs on Chinese goods, and people thought that would be a revolution. Well, 145 was a revolution of a different magnitude. And I think, we're not anywhere close to being out of the woods. If the levels now are set at 30% tariffs on the American side imposed on China and 10% by China imposed on the United States, those are historically high levels. And a lot of trade will not be able to take place. It just simply won't be economical for people to be importing manufacturers at that level. So this is an urgent crisis. I assume that this is going to be one of the highest priorities of the Trump administration and of the Chinese government. But I hope that cooler heads will prevail. And I do think for the long term here, health of the U.S.-China relationship, trade's a major part of it. And a decoupling of the two global economies, let me say that again.
Sure.
A decoupling of the U.S. and Chinese economies would have profoundly negative consequences for both. So getting this right is going to be very important. Trade negotiations normally take a year or 2 or 3. To try to compress this level of complexity into 90 days is going to be a real negotiating challenge, but it has to be done.